Some people have a bigger boat or a ship even to weather the storm, and some have very tiny boats, or no boat at all. So really, the reason I chose landscapes is because what else is there? What is it that sustains us? It's the land we stand on. And if the story of that land is not important to us, then how can anything else be important? Because I think it's something that Aldo Leopold, who was a ranger, first a ranger and then an ecologist in the US, said. He said this in 1949, and just see how pertinent it is even today. He said, civilization has so cluttered the elemental man-earth relationship with gadgets and middlemen that our awareness of it is growing dim. We imagine industry is what supports us, forgetting what supports industry. Just think about that for a second. We imagine industry is what supports us, forgetting what supports industry. And what supports industry is the land. And really, it behooves us, therefore, to pay attention to the land. And so when I embarked upon this journey, that was in 2013, 10 years ago, there was no dilemma in my mind. I just knew that I had to write about the land and about fresh water particularly, because that, again, is something that cuts across lives. Whether you're a king or a pauper, water is something that's elemental. And so fresh water and landscapes, these were things that really made me tick. And I wanted to explore how, in India, we are changing things and how things are changing, which is going to change survival for many people, you know, and it's not something that's other. It'll come back to bite us too, like we saw here in Himachal. Yesterday when I was driving in, my driver, every 100 yards would say, यहाँ पे एक घर था, वो नीचे पहुंच गया. यहाँ पे एक hotel था, वो नीचे पहुंच गया. You know, it's not something that's other. It's something that's us. The land is us. We came from the land, we are going to go back to it. This is the cycle, and we are part of it. Yeah. We're not, nature, environment is not something other. So that's something that I wanted to bring out, and therefore landscapes.
Therefore landscapes, and what a book. It's been longlisted for most awards this year. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Arati and Margin Lands. I'm again saying you must read it. When I was trying to pin down Arati for this session, I said, let's talk. And I sent her a couple of emails, and every time I sent her an email, it would come back saying, out exploring. So she's a very difficult person to contact. She's clearly out there. And when I say out there, Arati pursues a form of journalism which she says, you know, we call it the slow food movement. She wants to pursue slow journalism. And as she's just told you, her work on this book probably started 10 years ago. So Arati, at the time when journalism itself is dying a very slow death in newsrooms, why do we need slow journalism? I mean, journalism should be just good or bad journalism. Why slow journalism?
Let me tell you a story. I was not prepared for this either. You know, when I started out 10 years ago, I didn't think that it would take me 10 years I didn't even think I would write a book, you know. What happened was that I was interested in telling the story of the land, and I was interested in writing about water. And somebody told me, have you met this guy called Chatar Singh in the Thar desert? And I said, listen, I want to write about water. They said, yeah, go meet him. Nothing else, okay? They didn't tell me anything else. They gave me his phone number, and they said he is in Jaisalmer district. So I land up in Jaisalmer, I go to the bus stand and jump on a bus, and I say, I knew that he lived near Ramgarh, which is a village a little north of Jaisalmer. And I'm in that bus, and everyone is looking at me. The bus is packed. And everyone's looking at me because I look nothing like them. I have a backpack. I'm a photographer, so I have this equipment and whatnot. And then finally, and I'm sitting on that, you know that little seat that's right next to the driver? I'm sitting there. And the driver looks at me and he says, "Aap kahan ja rahe hain?" So I said, "I'm going to Ramgarh." Kyun? So I said, "Kaam hai wahan pe. Kahan rahoge?" So I said, "There must be a hotel. There'll be some hotel, right?" He started laughing. Everybody in the bus who heard it started laughing. And I was like, oh shoot, what is this? You know, they said, no, there's no hotel in Ramgarh, wahan pe kuch bhi nahi hai. And sure enough, they dropped me at this tea stall in this dusty little part of town with really nothing. I saw some BSF outposts there, so I knew I was close to the border. And I had this number, and the fellow was not picking up. And I was like, mar gaye, you know. I tried and tried and tried. I drank 3 cups of tea, and I sat there. It was blazing hot. It was May in Jaisalmer district, so you can kind of figure out what it must have been like, 46 or so. And finally, he picks up the phone. He lands up in an auto. He takes me, and I tell him that I've come here to learn about, so-and-so sent me. And, they told me that you have a wonderful way of interacting with water here. And he said, how much time do you have? And so I said, luckily, I had booked a one-way ticket. That's how I travel. I book a one-way ticket to places because I don't know how much time it'll take. Now, that was the first time I had booked a one-way ticket. And he said, this is not something that you will be able to come, find out, go back and write about. And truth be told, it took me a year and a half to tell that story. I kept going back and back and back. Why? Because the desert changes. That was summer. I saw it when it was dry and hot. And then it changes when the sandstorms come. That's about June, July. Then it changes when there's just one day of rain, maybe end of July, August. It changes the whole map of that district. And then things change again and again, right up till February, March, and then the cycle starts again. How could I write the story without seeing? That's why I called my editor. And I said, no story, nothing. Give me a year to work on this story. Luckily, I have the most precious editor on earth. Because he said, go for it. Who's going to do that? In this day and age.
Yeah, I can't think of too many editors who would do that.
And so I kept going back, and this was all on my own dime. Unfortunately, no money, so everything out of pocket. All my savings I used to be in corporate, all my savings was just bleeding. But I was learning and learning. And it goes back to something that Rainer Maria Rilke, a poet and writer, had said. He said this about art, but it's also about storytelling. That a year doesn't matter and 10 years are nothing, because the land is changing. So you have to change. You have to be there. You have to see these changes. And the only way you can do that is to slow down. Parachuting in and out doesn't cut it. And so that's when I realized that I have to slow down. I have to give myself time. And that's why slow journalism.
Wonderful. Slow journalism, sorry, I'm lisping, actually threw up some very interesting words. And I like the fact that you kind of list them in the book. You speak about Fansidia and scattered ponds like Kanti. And if I may, I wanted to read out page 37. And you say over here, when we lose an evocative lexicon, when we forget the organic words and their import, we lose what Barry Lopez calls the voice of memory over the land. When this happens, and it is happening throughout, the land risks losing its defenders, its most passionate advocates. With this comes the concomitant danger of land being appropriated by those who are not familiar with it. Interlopers who don't know where the last surface water can be found or how to harvest rain or seeds that lie dormant under the sands. By engineers or forest department officials who may not be equipped to recognize that desert dunes are in fact disguised water wells.
So there's a story about this. So Chatar Singh, this person that I met with, he takes me one very hot afternoon, June afternoon, to the dune. We're sitting on this huge dhora, they call it, huge dune, okay? If any of you have been to some dunes, you know it's something like that. One of the dunes, not somewhere else. We're sitting, Jaisalmer district has not had rain for 22 months, almost 2 years, okay? Not a drop of rain, there's been a drought. And this man, the reason I needed time, he doesn't speak much, or you can't hurry him, you can't ask him questions and answers, forget it. So I'm sitting there, he's sitting there, and I'm also enjoying, it's hot, okay, chalega, there's a little bit of a breeze. And he starts digging. He digs, and just 6 inches into the top of the dune, he brings up wet sand. After 22 months of no rain, there's wet sand 6 inches below. And I'm looking at him and saying, Pani? He's saying, yeah. He says, every dune, first of all, you know how sand is, right? Wraith is. It doesn't hold anything. Everything goes down. And so the belly of the dune is full of water. And he takes me down from the dune, and we walk along these dunes. You know how dunes are, right? There's like almost a swathe of dunes. We walk along the dunes, and under every dune is a hand-dug well. These wells have been dug by shepherds. And these shepherds have walked these lands for eons. They know where to find water. So it's not divining and all these mantras and all, it's not that. It's just pure science, actually. You know, they know that there's a dune here, there must be water below. And there's a hand-dug well. 22 months after no rain, he makes me look into the well, 3 feet below, full of water. Full of water. There are goats, sheep coming, the fellow is pulling up water, and as we go along, every few yards there's wells. And those are the wells that kept people going, the people who walked this part of the Silk Route. This was one arm of the Silk Route. That's what kept the merchants going too. So the people who walked these lands, they know these tricks, they know these stories. And so when you know the land, when you're familiar with the land, you know how to live with it. You know how, even if there's 2 years of drought, how to find water, where to find water, if you can find water. So that knowledge, that innate knowledge of the land is something that is being lost when you kind of remove yourself. So we city slickers, we've lost that connection. We don't know. When we go into the desert, we see the dune for what it is. We go there for sunset. We have forgotten the meaning of what it means for the people, for the animals living there. We've forgotten that.
Yes.
And that has then brought us to the brink of, oh my God, now we have climate change on us. What do we do? Because we don't have those tools anymore of how to survive when things change. Whereas people who've lived with the land and have seen such changes and so on, they know some tricks.
Yep.
It may not be the only answer or a long-lasting answer, but there's a way to go forward.
Yeah. I'll come to the part on climate change later, but I have to talk about the fact that we also live in an age where I have friends who are passionate about the environment. They've been arrested. They've had income tax raids against them. We have communities who are fighting for their land because a big company wants to come there and set up a mega project, and we call that development. What happens to these people? And how do we resolve this conundrum? And I've often wondered if as storytellers, have we failed because we are not able to give this alternative vision of what that world's going to be without this development and this mining and the highways. And how do we stand up for the environment in this constant fear of being persecuted?
Yeah, you know, I don't think I have an answer to that question. But yes, that is what I saw. I saw everywhere I went, and I've just come back from Kutch, like we were talking earlier. I've just come back from Kutch in Gujarat. And there are so many things happening in Kutch, so many changes coming. Everywhere, Kutch, Kerala, the book talks about Kerala, the book talks about Assam, the book talks about Arunachal Pradesh. These things are happening everywhere. And again, it's happening because there is a disconnect, that we don't understand the land. It is not against a government. This book is government agnostic. Unfortunately, no government in our history has been good for the environment. Or, I mean, I should even say that they haven't really been thoughtful, you know.
But I have to add that you've been bold enough to mention the companies who are violating rules. It's there in the book.
It's what's happening on the ground.
You've minced no words in mentioning them.
Yeah, and I mean, you go there, you go to Thiruvananthapuram, and you see what's happening. It's everywhere. Everybody knows it's happening too, you know. Yes. It's not the first time that name has been mentioned. It's not going to be the last. But the thing is, the awareness, you know, among us of the fact that, you know, it's very simple. So if you look at Kerala, we go to Kerala for the beaches, God's own country and all of that. Kerala has lost 63% of its beaches to erosion. Let that sink in. 2/3 of Kerala's beaches are gone. And why? Because we have built these structures which jut out from the coast, and that prevents, there's something called a longshore drift, which is sediments that come, that the sea carries up the coast. And that's obviously blocking it, right, at many points. So that sediment is not able to reach the beaches to build up the beach again. It's science. It's really science. It's not propaganda. It's not ideology. It's something that can be proven. It's something that can be scientifically studied, and something that should be taken into consideration while building. Why? Because that's going to help you also. Those big, you're putting so much money into either a port or a nuclear power plant or whatever. You need to know how that land behaves. Look what happened in Sikkim, the Chungthang Dam. How many crores of rupees have gone down the drain there? Because people did not study, did not pay attention to what that land could bear, how that land will behave, that it's a seismic zone, all of that, right? The point is, you lose money in the long run if your if your profits are only focused on the short term. The myopia will cost you money. So it behooves even these big companies to study the land and do it right by the land. It's not some...
Yeah, I have to add here, I do slightly disagree with you, because the studies were there. Okay. And they were, the environment impact studies say that if there is a GLOF event in Sikkim, this dam will wipe out everything.
Oh yeah.
And so the studies are there. Do we choose to listen to them? Do we not? And that's where the role of storytellers and journalists comes in.
Absolutely. And also, like a lot of people that I meet on the land, people who are living with these disasters tell us, you cannot wake someone up who pretends to be asleep.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think that kind of sums it up.
So that's what it is.
That's so true.
Of course, the studies are there, it's published. Yeah. There are protests, there are people saying, dudes, this is the thing, this is happening, please, read, this is the science.
Yeah, but we choose to ignore it. All right. I'm going to talk about a little bit about the gender space, because you spoke about slow journalism. But the very nature of the work that you and I do, and say a conservation biologist or a scientist who's out there, a female scientist, for instance, is out there what we call working in the field. And the field usually means you're by a riverside counting turtles, for instance. And all you have is that one, perhaps, male boss or the scientist, and you may not have access to toilets, you may not have access to even a room at night, you're pitching a tent and you're doing your surveys. How do we as women navigate these spaces? How easy is it, for instance, for you as a woman to be going out there, and do you ever worry about your safety? And how do we make sure that more women are able to do their jobs without having to, look back and worry about, is somebody following them? Are they even in a safe environment? I mean, 4 months ago, I broke this story on Me Too in Indian conservation. And nobody was willing to acknowledge that there is a Me Too in Indian wildlife conservation as well. Everybody thought it's something which happens only in Hollywood, or it happens in our urban spaces, in offices. So when I filed that story, nobody wanted to talk about it, including some of the victims didn't want to come forward with their names. So how do we make these spaces safe for women to do what you've done?
It's a very, very, very important issue. And Bahar, I know a lot of the people who came forward, for your story. And I've known those stories for years, and we all have known those stories for years. And it's taken a while for it to come out, unfortunately, but fortunately it has come out. It's sad. As a photographer, a large part, the whole world changes once the sun goes down. As a photographer, there is so much to see when it gets dark, even twilight, when there's no light. But as a woman, it is really difficult for me to step out at night in places that are not very inhabited and do my work. It is hard. Hard what? I don't do it. Simple as that. And so I see these men who have gone and camped out for nights and gotten these amazing pictures of the night sky, and they can publish dark sky spaces in India and all of that. It's lost to me, essentially, unless I go with them. And then again, that's a completely different thing. I'm following a track which is a story, and say I'm in rural Sundarbans, and I want to photograph the night sky there. And there's no one there with me at that time, right? I mean, I'm alone. And how do you do it? It's really hard. There are no answers. I wish it would change. Yeah. But it's also another thing where, how many of you, when you travel in rural India, see rural women at chai stalls? How many of you see rural women in the shops? You don't see women. They're invisible in many parts of India. And that again is a problem for me, because now as a person, I'm only talking to men. Yeah. I have to go looking for women to find the other side of the story, because there are two sides of the story. The men are doing one thing, they're seeing something. What the women go through, especially when it comes to droughts, floods, whatever, when the house is washed away and they have to move and they have children to take care of. Or like in the case, one of the stories in the book, a lady's husband who was a fisherman is taken by a tiger in Sundarbans, and she has to bring up 2 kids by herself, and she's outcast as a bad omen. To find these people, to talk to them, to be with them, to hear that side of the story, it's hard. So, both sides, you don't see the women as much. Imagine if women were out all through the night, claiming these spaces, you could be there too, right? Yeah. But it's not that way. And unfortunately, that's a huge problem. Mm-hmm. So again, no answers, but acknowledge that it is a problem. I acknowledge the fact I've just been probably really lucky that I don't have a Me Too story, but these people that I have met in rural India have kind of adopted me because I travel alone, and they're like, "Nahin, tu aap hamare saath reh jao," and I'm in their house, and and that kind of stuff. But it's a disaster waiting to happen to anyone who's out there, because that's the nature of the game, unfortunately.
Yes. Coming back to your book, I promised, Arati, that this session, as environmentalists, we tend to be a little bit depressive almost, because we're constantly talking about, species extinction and landscapes on the brink. But I promised Arati that I would keep this session in the positive space. And she has some delightful stories of communities, of individuals she met on her journey. So Arati, share some of the stories of the people you met and the insights that they shared with you.
So I often get, whenever I speak, I often get this question of, is there hope? Yeah. And one thing that I must say is that these people that I meet who have lost so much are some of the most hopeful people in the world. And they are gung-ho. They know that they can make things happen, they can change things, and they will do whatever it takes, Yeah. So there's so much there that is hopeful when you're with them. It's eventually a sad story because it's a dying art, but I'll tell you a story of when I went out with these 2 fishermen on the blackest night of the month in February on the Brahmaputra. And these fishermen are harpoon fishermen, so they harpoon their fish, handheld harpoons, not throwing. And they only fish on Amavas ki Raat, no moon. There has to be no light at all. And so we go out in this long boat. It's so shallow, you're almost at waters, you sit and then the water's right there. And it's very narrow. And he's standing up there, one guy is standing up there, one guy is rowing the boat behind. The man in front has got the harpoon. And what they do is, they fish, but they fish along with dolphins. And these are river dolphins, okay? These are our national aquatic animal, the Gangetic river dolphin. And they fish with dolphins. How? And I was shocked to see this. Okay, I'd heard about it. And these 2 fishermen are the last of their tribe. They're also going to go off and take painting jobs in the city, is what they said, because there's just no fish left in the river, which is another thing completely. It's all there in the book. And after 3 hours of fishing, every day for 2 or 3 nights, dark nights, we came up with 2 fish. So that gives you an idea of how few fish there are in a massive river like the Brahmaputra. And what he does is, so we're on this boat and we're rowing, and he suddenly we kind of stop at one point. He holds out his harpoon and he just tickles the water like tick, 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 and stops. Then he goes and stops. Then he draws an arc. He goes tick, 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 tick. Absolutely quiet. We cannot talk. If we spoke, so we're completely quiet. And suddenly, after a few minutes of doing that, whoosh, a mother and a calf of Gangetic River dolphins swimming by our side. And what they do is, these dolphins also eat fish, and they push the fish. If there were a lot of fish in the river, they would have pushed the fish towards the boat, and the guy would harpoon, and then throw some to the dolphin as well. And then, that's how it's symbiotic. And then the dolphins go away. The next time it need not be the same dolphin, some other dolphin comes. But those 3 nights were some of the most magical nights, because you can't see your face in front of your hand in front of your face. It's such a dark night. And still you'll see that ghostly, grayish of the dolphin that comes, and you can only hear it because it breathes outside water. It's a mammal. So, and it's just most fantastic. I mean, we have such riches in our country. We have so much in our country. And there's a lot to be hopeful for, like that little
the butterfly
pollinator
just came to say hello to us.
Look at that,
and
how
went
lovely.
away.
There's a lot to be hopeful for. There's a lot to protect. There's a lot to conserve. And it just requires all of us waking up from this sleepwalking that we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that magical moment with the dolphin, I don't know if any of you know, just an hour away from Delhi, if any of you want to go see dolphins, you can. Gangetic dolphins. It's on the Ganga. I filmed them. And it's in a place called Narora. I don't know if I should be giving this away on this platform. But if you ever want to go and see Gangetic dolphins, get into a boat, go and see them. It is an extremely magical experience. And in fact, you talk about another species, the Indus dolphin. A mother and a baby,
yes.
Which is a lovely story, but I think I'm going to tell people to buy your book and read more about it instead of your giving it away.
And that's even closer, that's on the Bias.
Lovely.
So, yeah.
Lovely, lovely. All right, so there are, what I am going to do as someone who's moderating this panel, I'm going to give more time to the audience because I feel we haven't had the chance to hear from all of you. So, स्पेशली जो स्टूडेंट्स हैं हमारे साथ, आप कुछ पूछना चाहेंगे वाइल्ड लाइफ के बारे में, क्लाइमेट चेंज के बारे में, आप में से कोई कुछ सवाल करना चाहेंगे? इवन अ कमेंट इज वेलकम. दिस इज द चांस फॉर यंग पीपल इन द ऑडियंस, द स्टूडेंट्स हु आर विजिटिंग टुडे. आप कुछ बोलना चाहेंगे? या, वंडरफुल, वी हैव अ हैंड देयर. We'll just get a mic to you. And meanwhile, if anybody else also has questions, please feel free to raise your hand. And we'll come back to Arati for some final questions.
I would like to ask that, as you said, you like to go in wildlife. Do you ever fear that how the animals will react seeing you?
Great question.
Great question.
What do wild animals think of us? Do you mean that we're also disturbing them in some way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are they scared of you?
No, absolutely. And in fact, that's one of the things that all of us wildlife photographers or wildlife documenters, chroniclers, try to keep in mind, because we are very mindful that we are in their space, and nobody wants that confrontation. Nobody likes conflict, neither the animal nor the human. And so we're very respectful. There's a way to behave, there's a way to dress, there's a way to not speak very loudly, not stay very long. That's very important. As photographers, we just want the next shot, the next shot, the next shot. But we need to know when to get up and go from there. We should leave before the animal leaves, is the question. It's a thing that we say. And so, those things are very important. And how we treat the space that the animal lives in is so important too, Even as a river, imagine all these dolphins in the river, they need slightly deep water. So taking out too much water from the top, in dams or for irrigation and things like that. Keeping in mind what is good for not just humans, but for everybody that we share the landscape with is really, really important. So in that sense, what the animals think of what we are doing to their land is also important. So we need to keep that in mind. And not just with rivers, with anything, roads, right? These linear infrastructures that cut through roads. We have tigers dying by roadkill. The other day I saw a desert cat and a desert fox and a leopard and everything roadkill because somebody's going too fast on a road that cuts through these landscapes that have these animals. So again, thinking of a landscape, not just of a small part, but thinking of a landscape and who all live in it, being inclusive is really important. Thank you. May I know your name?
Kaustav asked
Thank you
that
so
question.
much.
Thank you, Kaustav, for that question. And just to build on what Arati said, a lot of photographers were concerned that rules were being violated. For instance, photographers were going out and using flashlights on animals, especially nocturnal animals. So a code of conduct was actually developed. It's there. Would you be knowing where it is?
Yeah, it's on Conservation India's website.
Okay, Conservation India's website. There's actually a code of conduct for wildlife photographers. You can have a look at that. So you're not allowed to film things like a bird's nest. So if you ever enter your photograph in a competition, it'll just be rejected if it has a bird nest, because the fear is that you're then disturbing the chicks. So there is a ethical code which is listed there, and I think it's important that photographers, journalists follow that. Any questions?
Good afternoon,
Yes,
ma'am.
Sorry.
Ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, my name is Atharv. I would like to ask that, is tourism in some way affecting the wildlife present in India, especially in places like Himachal Pradesh, as you see the development of roads and infrastructure, which has also led to the receding of many forests and wildlife patches?
Very good question. Tourism in many ways can be good and in many ways detrimental to the environment and to the places that we visit as tourists. Especially, like we saw a little earlier, waste. Any tourist destination has a huge waste problem. In Leh, where I work, one of the chapters in the book talks about it. In Ladakh, just food waste has spawned stray dog population. The population is so much so that in some places, for every 30 humans, there's 97 dogs. It's like that. And these dogs are now becoming feral and going into the hills, into the mountains, mating with wild wolves, becoming a hybrid which is even more dangerous than either a stray dog or a wolf. And so in many ways, fueled by tourism, fueled by waste, fueled by feeding, making an animal come to you, like in the Himalayan marmot, for example. Everybody goes, oh, it's so cute, let's feed it. All terrible practices which just harms the wildlife more than the tourism benefits the place, the economy, and so on. So again, things that you have to keep in mind, even here, monkeys and stuff like that, which, they're probably habituated to humans, and so feeding them and things like that are not the right things to do, because they are supposed to go out into the wild and find their places. And, coming close to humans, they can spread disease, they can get harmed, people can get scared and whack them, kill them, hit them, maim them, things like that. So there's always, wild needs to stay wild and free. And so those kinds of things are very important to keep in mind. Thank you again for that question.
And just to give two quick examples from Himachal of some of the positive work that's going on, you have the western tragopan, which is being bred in captivity and released in the wild. It is being done by Himachal Forest Department in a place called Sarhan. Sarhan का नाम सुना है किसी ने? यहाँ से कुछ घंटा दूर है. And so the forest, this is a bird which has almost been hunted to extinction. It is being bred in captivity by the Himachal Forest Department and released in the wild. So I feel like one should also celebrate such examples.
Just Google that bird, Tragopan, and
yes.
No sari, no dress that we can make can rival that bird. That bird is just gorgeous looking, gorgeous looking bird.
Yeah. Okay, we have lots of questions. Yes, ma'am, please.
So I don't know if you're familiar with Punjab and what's happening there for environment, But as a child, I remember when we used to go out into the interior in the villages, there used to be village ponds, which are over the years when have just gone. And when I got married into Hoshiarpur district, it was full of the chois, the natural way of the water flow. So all that has gone. And thirdly, the industry is there's no regulation.
Ma'am,
as
what's your
such.
question, please? Can you ask your question?
So I am asking you about your thoughts on that.
Right. It's so amazing. Thank you for bringing this question, because there is something that I wanted to say that I hadn't said. Yes, so I've walked through Punjab. I started on the Wagah border and walked right through to Bahar and then into Rajasthan. So I walked, okay, no vehicles at all, just walking the whole way. And I saw a lot of things, and even the ponds, like you were saying. Many of these things, the place where I come from, I live in Bangalore. In the 16th century, the person who built Bangalore thought about the fact that Bangalore has no perennial rivers. And so he built these lakes, cascading lakes, like you're talking about, When one fills up, it goes to the other. When that fills up, it goes to the other. And so there are these cascading lakes, and there were thousands of them. And today, I think we have less than 100, and all of them are putrid. And what ends up happening then is, again, the groundwater is destroyed, because these things are all ways to recharge, to replenish, to come back to when there's no rain, for example. And so when we lose this ancient connect to the land, which is basically what you're talking about, because that's how people used to live, or you pollute it, if any of you live near Harike, you'll see the color of the Satluj and Bias, and see the difference in the colors. One is black, and that is all because of industrial waste. And so, when we do such things to things, that this is what keeps us going, rivers, lakes, ponds, this is life. Yeah. And when we go and sully that, basically, apne hi pair pe kulhadi maar rahe hain.
And just to add, we do have an Environment Pollution Act, we have a Water Pollution Act, we have an Air Pollution Act. We have some of the best environment laws in the world. But where we fail is in implementation and enforcement.
That's very true.
And I don't know if all of you are aware, but I have to say this, that right now there is a move on to dismantle the body of environment laws in our country. And that is something, we say, oh, we want to end Inspector Raj, and we want to end, we want to end bribery and corruption. So does that mean we do away with the law? Do we tomorrow do away with traffic policemen because we want to end bribery? So I don't know. We need some of those laws because we need to keep our waterways clean. We need to keep our air clean. Till today, not one person has been booked under the Air Act, which was introduced in 1960. So I think these are all questions we need to ask, that why do we always complain about the environment, and why is there not better enforcement?
I mean, it's a question of othering. Environment is something that's seen as an obstacle. Actually, it's not, because you're breathing that air, na? You're having that difficulty, right? That is also environment. We are environment. Yeah. And until that othering stops, until we see it all connected as a web, and when you move anything in the web, other things also will move, until we recognize that, we are going to be living in this kind of, I'm sorry, there's one more question?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Saisha Singh, a 5th grader from CCS, Carmel Convent School. You've told us about the women's side of the story on environment change. My question is, what is the children's side of the story on climate change?
Lovely question. Thank you so much for asking.
Thank you so much. You are our hope. I often say that I have written my generation off, because here, look where we are. And the next generation and the generation after that, if you guys, and I see so many students in the back, which is just, it gladdens my heart. If you guys can take anything away, know that you have the power to stand up for your rights to clean air, clean water, good food, nutritious food, and a land, right? The land that is healthy, right? So don't take that lightly. Make sure that at any point in time that if you see that that is threatened, raise your voice, speak up, because there's power in numbers. And with kids, I feel that you guys are our hope, yeah. really. And it's so funny that this happens because just today there was a tweet saying that this book should be in school curriculums. Somebody just tweeted. I don't know if you like to read, please do go through it. There are some nice drawings also in it if you like. But go through it because this is also a history of India. You know, this is also a history of India. It's a different history, but it's a history that should also be something that you guys talk about. Thank you so much, and I really, really hope to see you at the forefront of this fight. It's a collective fight because it's our survival at stake.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Hi, Amrita. Okay. Another child, he or she takes priority. There's a child who's asking question.
She's asked her question, I think. You can go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Amrita. I'm Lokesh. Are you working on the traditional architecture also? Traditional architecture. I mean, you were talking about Jaisalmer. There's a guy who's built that school. You must have read about it, heard about it. They know. I mean, you don't need an air conditioner in that heat. Right. And there used to be those chalk-band houses in Rajasthan, Haryana, those places. Are you working on that also, or are there people who are working on this?
There are people working on it.
Thank you.
I don't particularly work on it, but it comes into that, you know, because I see that a person who is living in a bamboo hut, for example, in Arunachal Pradesh, which is built on stilts, is far better equipped when the floods come. Why? Because that was the traditional architecture, right? And so when the floods come, they are on stilts, they're fine, nothing happens to their land. Whereas these people who have changed and they have built either tina sheds, you know, that kind of stuff, or concrete, their houses are flooded or it completely goes away and they have to redo it, and they lose lakhs of rupees, and they're farmers, so you know it's in balance it becomes quite a crazy thing. So it comes into the storytelling. It's all part of nature. Right? It's all part of the environment. How you build, what you use to build, where you build. Do you build on a slope? Do you build in the valley? Do you build on the top? Whatever, right? All of that. I mean, look at Kasauli, right? Even this, how you build, where you build, and you know what you have to understand the land. I think if there's one thing that I want anyone to take away, either from this afternoon or from the book, is the importance of local geographies. What's right for Kasauli is not right for Chandigarh. May not be right for Chandigarh. What's right for Bangalore may not be right for Bombay, right? You have to, what's right for southern Bangalore where I live is not right for northern Bangalore because it's a completely different landscape. So understanding those local geographies is damn important. And when you do that, it's very unlikely that you will go wrong. It's very unlikely that you will fail in terms of, you know, like massive losses. Small things might happen.
Arati, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yours is a very powerful story.
Thank you.
Yet, the subject you're touching upon, conservation versus development, is the most highly political subject you can touch. Given that, and given you've touched on Kasauli, you've touched on all what's happened recently, is there any way to hold people to account? Is there any way to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future, or is it a lost battle?
It's not a lost battle. Yeah. Absolutely not. I mean, if we think it's a lost battle, then we are sunk, right? We cannot think that. We're not allowed to think that. Moreover, it's not conservation versus development. That's something that I really want to debunk over here, if anything. And none of us is against development. We all want many things, right? It's just a question of how and what is appropriate, you know, what is correct for that land, coming back to local geographies. How do you build in this region, or what do you put here? If you're putting a huge windmill, a wind farm, are you doing it over a sacred grove where there are people who, you know, need that land for certain things? It's just putting thought into it, you know, think. Let's do this as if other people, other things also matter, not just lining our pockets. And speak up, because really, all of us, it's going to affect all of us, and it's all of us. It's our fight, and that's why, you know, it comes back to that first thing you said. It's not borders. This is not Chandigarh versus Haryana versus Punjab or anything. Affects all of us, and I think when we realize that this is not something dur ki baat hai, are yahan climate change or whatever. It's not even climate change. In fact, those two words you will hardly find in this book. This book is all what we have done to the land well before any of this, you know, climate change is going to exacerbate all of this that's happening. So think about that, right? It's really what we're already doing to the land.
Thank you, Arati, for that. Any last questions? I can take one more. One last
Hi,
one.
Arti.
Yeah.
I'm Anu here. We live in a small place called Dera Bassi. There's a township by ATS. It's a pretty renowned name. When we bought the apartment, I wasn't aware, but soon after moving, we realized that there's a very foul smell which permeates the air almost 7-8 hours in a day.
Wow.
So I realized later that we are living very close to the industrial area, which we weren't aware of. I wonder how they were sanctioned this land and how did I reach there, because we were not aware of an industrial area there. So there have been people fighting some cases for the past 25 years, villagers, that this foul smell, they can't breathe. I can't breathe. So I'm a very morning person. I get up in the morning, I want to open the windows. You can't open any window or door in the morning.
Your question,
So my question is, like, what does one do about it? What can I do about it other than complaining to ATS or writing to their management or now writing to the Prime Minister, or like what should I do?
I think, we just have to keep fighting, because this is...
I can't breathe
you
in the
can't
morning.
breathe.
You can't breathe. You can't
right?
breathe.
Even India-wide campaign, this kind of problem, yours is one.
Yes.
There is a different avatar of that same problem somewhere else.
Okay.
It's a question of clean air, industrial practices. They're obviously dumping something somewhere which is not...
There's a nala which goes by the society.
So whatever
it's got
it is,
totally
right.
black effluent in it.
Exactly.
Black.
So I think we just have to keep aware. And
So what should I do? Do you recommend? Do recommend me something. What can I do?
Okay, so ma'am, we can have a detailed discussion later, but I don't want to just dismiss you like that.
No.
Have
you.
all the residents thought of coming together and going to the National Green Tribunal? There are lawyers who can go and fight your case. You can sue the company. Why are they there? You can. There is hope. Under the Right to Clean Air Act, you can file a petition and do this.
yeah, I think PILs and NGT is our last hope until that also gets disbanded.
I just, Yes. Okay. Yes, you are audible. Yeah.
A lot of us will be affected. They remove their catalytic converter at night. There are regulations.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Affluent treatment and catalytic converter, and that can be solved with.
No.
I mean, you can go to the Green Tribunal also, but go to the local that pollution inspector. He can also help.
Okay, we'll have this discussion outside. I'm sure there are many commonalities here and very valid points, ma'am. Thank you for raising them. I come from Delhi, which is right now a toxic soup. But anyway, I just want to say that, just as we salute our army and we salute, we protect our borders, I think it's also time to celebrate our forests and our wildlife and salute the people who protect them rather than putting them in jail. And salute the people who go out and write those stories. So Arati is available there. I also have a book, incidentally. Let me put my small plug in. So I'll also be there if you want to chat with us or get us to sign your books. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.